I have Dalit, Chet Dalit. There are items that act as barriers against tuma, but do not convey tuma. A loom that is ready for weaving, the ropes of a bed, garbage baskets, and window bars. These items neither convey tuma nor act as barriers against tuma. Seeds, plants that are connected to the ground, other than the plants listed above, hailstone, snow, frost, ice, salt, an animal that jumps from one spot to another, a person that jumps from one spot to another, a bird that flies, a garment that flutters, and a ship that sails on water. But if the ship was tied with something that can hold it in place, or a stone was placed on the garment, it conveys tuma. Rabbi Yossi says a house on a ship does not convey tuma. If two sealed barrels, each containing a piece of corpse the size of an olive, are located inside a house, the barrel remains tahor, but the house remains tameh. If one of the barrels is open, the barrel and the room are tameh, and the other barrel remain tahor. A similar ruling applies to two chambers that open into a room. Okay.
Okay. So Perek Tes is an interesting one. It's one of these things where we have a certain setup, and we're going to do a whole bunch of different configurations of the same setup to see the different ways that Tuma works. And it's actually a great chapter for really understanding how Tuma works. The problem is that it starts off with the word kaveres, and the kaveres over here is not well described in the Mishnah, and there are multiple commentators who all are at odds as to what this kaveres is. Kahati spends a page and a half of introduction trying to resolve what the kaveres is, and I'm going to cut to the chase over here. He goes with the parish of the Ma'aneh Yeshua, which is consistent throughout the perek. So we're just going to stick with that and not going to worry our heads about all the different other possibilities of what the kaveres could be. And that is that it is a kli adama, right? It is an unbaked kli. It's just it's a beehive. It's called a beehive because it's just shaped out of mud, left to dry. It doesn't have to be a finished thing because all that you want to do is gather bees inside it. And bees should make a nest in it. But
so it's like mud they found, a pile of mud they found on the floor, and it's just sitting there.
You take mud and you shape it into a clear, but instead of putting it into a kiln to bake it, you just let it dry in the sun. Because this is not something that people are going to be eating their breakfast cereal out of. It just needs to be strong enough that the bees will find it and make a nest in it.
Okay.
Now, the reason why it has to be made of adamah is that it's got to be impervious to tuma. Okay, so that's a clear adamah is of its nature impervious to tuma. It could be sitting on top of a dead body; it would still be tahor. Okay, and it's also got to be a kli for the initial case. So in order for it, because if it were something of a large midah, then it would in itself be considered a tent. Okay, but it's got to be a kli, and it's got to be impervious to tuma. So it could either be mud or stone, but just in terms of the likelihood of the situation, we're talking about it being a plain clay vessel. Okay. So here it is, a kaveres. It's sort of a conical thing that's sitting inside the entrance of the house. Kaveres shehi pesach pesach. So it's sitting inside the doorway of a house. Okay, part of it is inside the house underneath the roof, but the mouth is facing outwards. Right, so the mouth is not under the roof.
Yeah.
Okay. Kazayis minha meis nasun tachtea or al gaba mibachut. So now you've got a piece of from a corpse that is sitting on top of this kaveres or underneath the kaveres. Okay. So now it has this property that since it is itself impervious to tuma, it itself will not become tameh, and whatever's inside it is still protected from the tuma because it's a proper kli.
Right.
And it won't let tuma in. However, because it's a kli, it also cannot be an ohel. So it cannot screen, and it doesn't screen, and it doesn't spread. So you'll see if the kazayis is on top of it, then obviously the tuma goes upwards. Anything that's above it or below it, and it skips over the space on the interior of the kli. See, because the kli protects its own interior, but it can't protect anything else. So the tuma.
I'm sorry, you don't have this diagram. I'm not understanding exactly what this is. It looks like it could be a fire, it could be a hive. You see the thing. Oh, I can't quite get this. You see them
Okay,
sticking
there
up.
you go. Yes.
You see it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that is above and below that.
There's something sticking through it.
Something sticking through it. Yeah.
Unless it's is that the Kazayas Mina Mace that's sitting on top of it or sitting below it? Difficult to tell. I'm not sure. What does the caption say?
It just says less than one handbreadth beneath the hive. Whatever that is coming through the
Okay.
hive or the pipe, whatever is it's what it is. I don't know if it's straw. I thought maybe for a while I thought it was a flame or something.
So the positioning looks right. But it's just that it's just that the point is that it's near the ground and therefore it cannot it neither screens nor spreads tumor. And the
Right.
magic of this is that the tumor actually skips through the kli itself. It leaves the inside untouched, but then the top carries on. So if it's underneath it, then bursts through and goes all the way up to the sky. But it skips over the bit in the middle, the interior of the kli. Okay, and anything that's not directly vertically in line with that kazais, the inside of the kli and the house itself all remain tahor. What happens if the tumah is inside the house? Only the house becomes tameh because the base of the kli is facing the house. It's not like the tumah wants to get into there, so it'll just escape around the kli. However, if the tumah is inside that kli, then now what's going to happen is that because the kli itself is more than a tefach high, okay, so now that its top wall functions as an ohel to spread tumah. Remember, this is what we said about kalim, is that they spread tumah, but they can't screen it.
Right.
So because it spreads tumah, the whole thing becomes an ohel, which goes into the house. And it can't screen tumah, so once it's inside the house, it spreads the tumah inside the house. So it's brought the tumah into the house, and everything now becomes tameh. And also not only inside the house, but underneath the kli, because the ohel has spread the tumah underneath the kli, and not only underneath the kli, but also on top of the kli, because it cannot screen the tumah. It spreads the tumah, but cannot screen it. So therefore, it just makes the area of tumah bigger.
Okay.
Okay. Now, what happens if the kli was propped up a tefach above the ground? Okay. Tumah tachteha. So if tumah is underneath it, or if the tumah is inside the house, or if the tumah is on top of it, hakol tameh elatocha. Right. So then what happens is no matter where the tumah is, as long as the tumah is not inside it, if the tumah is inside is on the bottom, then because you've got a tefach underneath, so therefore the bottom forms an ohel, as we described before. So it forms an ohel which can spread but cannot screen. So again, it spreads into the house. Everything becomes tameh in the house. It spreads on top of the kli because it cannot screen it, so it goes up to shemayim. The only thing that's protected is still the inside. Okay, and even if the tumah is on top of the kli, it cannot screen the tumah, so the tumah gets down beneath the kli, and once it's beneath the kli, it's under the ohel that can spread it, and therefore once it spreads, it goes into the house as well.
That's good.
And spread so it just kind of fills up that whole area. Everything becomes tameh except for the interior. The socha, however, if it's inside the interior, then just as in the previous case, then everything becomes tameh because now the kli is not screening it from anything. Even its own interior is now tameh for sure. Okay. The medvarim morim. When is all of this so that we said in Mishna Aleph and Base? Bisman shehi kli mechol cheres. This is when it is a complete kli. Okay. However, haisa pechusa upakuka bekash. So now let's say it was damaged, okay, so that it's no longer usable as a kli. However, the owner said, okay, let me just stuff it with straw or something to close up the hole. So now it no longer has a hole in it. It's also no longer a kli. So what is it if it's not a kli and it's a solid structure? Now it's an ohel. as soon as it loses the din of a kli, it can function as an ohel not just to spread, but also to screen tuma. Okay, so now, so it's one of its strengths is that even though it lost its status as a kli, which means that okay, you lose that benefit of it, but now it can actually function as an ohel to screen tuma as well. So now our case changes. Okay, or she kli mechulcheles, and also it had to be a kli that was not filling the entire doorway, because a kli can join with the walls of a house to screen tuma, even though it itself could not screen by itself. We've learned that before, that the kli can join with the walls of the house to form an ohel. Okay, or afutza, or if it was wedged into the doorway, so that there was no so there was no gap more than a tefach. That's considered wedged in if there's no gap less than a tefach, or more than a tefach at least. Okay. As long as it doesn't have a tefach in any one place, then that opening is considered blocked by the kli, and it joins with the walls of the house to form an ohel. What happens if a kazayas is underneath this thing? Okay. So since it is now an ohel that can screen from tuma as well as spread tuma, okay, but it's underneath, but there's no tefach underneath the kli. It's on the ground again. So all that can happen is that the tuma goes downwards into the ground. Otherwise, it's completely screened, because the top wall of the kli acts as an ohel to block the tuma, and the inside is still tahor, because the bottom is screening it. Al gaba, what happens if the tumah is on top of it? Then only up to the shamayim becomes tameh. Babayis, what happens if the tumah is inside the house? Ain tameh il habayis, only the house becomes tameh. Besocha, however, if the tumah is inside the kli, where does the tumah say? Ain tameh il tocha. The only thing that becomes tameh is inside the kli, because it's an ohel that screens tumah now as well. So the tumah can't get the tumah will go out through the mouth of the kli, but the mouth of the kli is sitting outside. So the only thing that can, but and we're saying it's not a kli, it's an ohel, because it's been broken. It's not called a kli anymore. Okay, so we're going to see a lot of cases like this in this Mishnah, and each one you should be able to work out where the tumah is going to based on the data. Okay.
Hey, Gimel.
Yeah.
If the pot is whole, Beis Hillel says it protects everything from becoming tameh. However, Beis Shammai says it protects only food, liquids, and earthenware. Beis Hillel subsequently ruled like Beis Shammai. If there was a bottle in the upper story full of tahor liquid, the bottle becomes tameh for 7 days, even though the liquid remains tahor. However, if one pours the liquid into a different vessel, it becomes tameh. If a woman is kneading dough in a bowl, the woman and the bowl become tameh for 7 days, but the dough remains tahor. However, if the dough is transferred to a different vessel, it becomes tameh. Beis Hillel subsequently ruled like Beis Shammai. If the utensils are made of dung, stone, or unbaked clay, everything remains tahor. If the utensil is considered tahor for use with sanctity, sanctified food, or the para aduma procedure, everything remains tahor, because everyone is trustworthy regarding the para aduma procedure. The reason for the above rulings is that because utensils that are always tahor and also tahor earthenware utensils can turn tuma when combined with the walls of a structure.
It's exactly what we were just talking about today. Is that they combine with the walls of a structure to form an ohel. Okay.
Kalim. Zion. There are 3 pink cases: an aphorian, a susceptible to becoming tameh with midges tuma; a pinkas that is receptacle for wax is susceptible to becoming tameh with warped tuma; and a smooth pinkas is tahor from any form of tuma. There are 3 beds: a bed that is designed for lying on, susceptible to becoming tameh with midges tuma; a bed of glassware manufacturers susceptible to becoming tameh with corpse tuma; and the bed of net makers is tameh from any form of tuma. There are 3 mashpelas containers: a mashpela container for manure or susceptible to becoming tameh with midges tuma; one used for storage susceptible to becoming tameh with corpse tuma; and a puklat of camels is tahor from any other form of tuma. Okay. Okay. Talmud base Aleph. His followers saw him descend, and they came running and hastily sanctified their hands and their feet with the water of the laver. They took the shovels and forks and ascended to the top of the altar. The limbs and the fats that were not consumed during the night, the Kohanim removed them onto the sides of the altar. If the sides do not hold three sexual parts, they arranged them opposite the ledge on the ramp. They began piling up the ashes on top of the mound, and the mound was in the center of the altar. At times, there was something like 300 core of ashes on it. And on the festivals, they would do not remove the ashes from the altar because it was an adornment for the altar, and in its days, the Kohen would never lax in taking out the ashes. They began bringing up logs to arrange the fire of the pyre, but are all the woods valid for the pyre? Yes, all woods are valid for the pyre, except for an olive tree and a vine. However, with these woods, they were accustomed with branches of a fig tree and a nut tree or an olive oil tree.
Yeah.
Okay. Go on to Adios. Hey. 4 brothers, 2 of whom were married to 2 sisters, and those who were married to the 2 sisters both died. Both of these sisters require chalitza, but they may not be taken in yibum. But if the brothers went ahead and married the sisters, they must divorce them. If Elias says in the name of Rav Shammai, they may keep them, but Beis Hillel says they must divorce them. Akiva ben Mahalalel testified concerning 4 matters. The sages said to him, Akiva, rescind from your position on the 4 matters that you have said, and we will appoint you to the Ab Beis Din for the Jewish people. Akiva said, replied to them, it is preferable for me to be called a fool in all my days and not become a wicked person for even one moment for the omnipresent, that people should not say, Akavia reacted from his opinions for the sake of obtaining a position of authority. Yeah, Akavia declared tummy the deposited hair and yellow uterine blood, but the sages declared them tahor. He would permit benefiting from the hair of a blemish, but a cord which fell out and was placed in the recess of a wall, and afterwards he slaughtered the animal, but the sages prohibited it. Here, Kabi ben Lahal used to say, we do not give to drink either to a female convert nor to a freed slave woman. But the sages say we do give them to drink. And they said to him, an incident once occurred in Yerushalayim in connection with Kar Chemes, a freed slave woman, and Shemaiah and Avatalim gave her soda water to drink. Akiva ben Mahal replied to them, they gave her to drink similar, but they excommunicated Akiva, who died in excommunication. I'm sorry?
The placebo, basically, yeah.
And the court had his coffin stolen. The Yehuda said, heaven forbid that one may say that Akiva was excommunicated, for the doors of the temple courtyard did not close to anyone for the entire period of the people of Israel who was as great as wisdom as fair as was Akavi ben Yehala. Rather, was it he who they communicated? It was Eliezer ben Tanach, who slighted the requirements of keeping both hands tahor. And when he died, the court sent its agents, they placed a stone on his coffin, which teaches you that when anyone is excommunicated and dies in a state of excommunication, the court stones his coffin. Okay.
One more.
At the time of Akavia's death, he said to his son, my son, retract from the 4 matters that I used to say. You said to Akiva, his father, but why did you not retract yourself? Akiva said to his son, I heard these rulings pronounced in the majority, and they, the sages, heard them pronounced by the majority. Thus I adhered to my received tradition, and they adhered to their received tradition. But you heard one set of rulings pronounced by a single individual, myself, and a conflicting set of rulings pronounced by the majority. Therefore, it's preferable for you to abandon the words of the individual and to grasp on the words of the majority. He said to Akavi, father, intercede with your colleagues about me. Akavi answered him, I will not intercede. He said to him, perhaps you have found some cause in me. And Akavi said to him, no, it is your deeds that will bring you close to the sages, and your deeds that will distance you. Okay.
Right.
And we are on to Moikatin Gimel Aleph. These people may cut their hair during Kol HaMoed. One who arrived from abroad was released from captivity, left prison, or left communicated, whose ban was lifted by the sages. Similarly, one who applied to a sage and had been released from his view, his Nazir and the Mazorah, who returned to a state of communication to a state of purity. And these people may launder their clothing during Kol HaMoed. One who arrived from abroad was released from captivity, left prison to the execution ban was lifted by sages. Similarly, one who applied to a sage and was released from his vow, hand towels, barber's cloths, and bath towels may be also laundered. Zavim, Zavos, menstruates, women who have been birthed and all return from a state of contamination to a state of purity. These are permitted to launder their clothing, but all others are forbidden. And these documents may be written during Kol HaMoed. Instruments of betrothal, divorce and proceed, testaments, gifts, postbolum, evaluation documents, support documents, chalitza certificates, refusal, selection, contracts, support edicts, and government documents.
Hey.
And lion. Valid. A partition of reeds, if there is less than 3 handbreadths between one reed and another through which a kid can enter, is regarded as a partition. And a breach in the fence up to 10 cubits is regarded as an entrance. If it exceeds this, it is forbidden opposite the breach. If there are many breaches, if that which stands exceeds the breach, it is permitted. But if the breach exceeds that which stands, it is forbidden opposite the breach. If one plants a row of 5 vines, Shammai said it is a vineyard, but Hillel says it is not a vineyard unless there are 2 rows. Therefore, if one sows within 4 cubits of a vineyard, Shammai say he may render forbidden 1 row, but Hillel says he rendered forbidden 2 rows. If one plants 2 opposite 2 and one protects like a tail, it is a vineyard. 2 opposite 2 and 1 between, or 2 opposite 2 and 1 in the middle, this is not a vineyard, unless there are 2 opposite 2 and one protects like a tail.
Okay. And we're done. Have a wonderful week.
Have a great day. Okay, I'll speak to you tomorrow, Shem.